and welcome back, my cosmic companions, to yet another episode of RimWorld Odyssey. At the moment, we're still landed at the ancient military facility that the mercenaries had taken over that we killed last episode. But today, my friends, we are going to be tracking down and eradicating the mechive that has been plaguing this solar system for far too long. Mark my words. Helping us accomplish this are the generous amounts of autocannons and rocket swarm launchers that we added to our gravship last episode, truly turning it into a gunship. We've currently zeroed in on the position of a frozen terraformer that apparently has the energy signatures of a grav core that is most likely powering it, and it's not all that far away. I suppose it's time that we headed in that direction. Well, I suppose this is the place, eh? Icy, frozen, and pretty uncomfortable for the most part. At the center of it all, a large glacier-like structure. It would seem that the malfunctioning terraformer has encased itself in a mountain of solid ice. Well, it's not going to mine itself out of there, so I suppose we shouldn't waste any time, and we'll just get started on a little bit of excavation, eh? We had set up 3 separate tunnels, that way we could cover as much ground as humanly possible when Coleman eventually struck a fortified wall. Call it a hunch, but I think the terraformer's inside there. Instead of deciding to look for a door, we ended up making our own. Now that this place is opened up, we can start looking around. If you believe it, there was a lot of ice, but there were also a lot of other things, like a medicine pallet, as well as an ancient safe. And within the safe, an anti-grain warhead. Oh mama, it would seem we've hit the lottery with this one. This is a special tool that'll help us later. For now though, we're going to put it on the ship. We began exploring the facility, and as expected, we found a frozen little drone sentry bot, and we blasted it into oblivion. Once he was dead, we started exploring a bit more, during which time, under the icy mountain, we would find the malfunctioning terraformer. Now all we had to do was get rid of the hunter drone, the swarm drones, and also the turret inside, which was a bit easier said than done, but we did do it. Now comes an epic beatdown for the terraformer itself. Once destroyed, we could finally reap our reward of the beautiful grav core. Ooh la la. We would have one team take it back to the ship so we could ensure that it was properly protected and within our care at any given moment, while the rest of the team started adventuring throughout the icy facility a bit more, as is basically standard procedure with all of these places by this point. During this exploration, though, we actually encountered many large ice walls, marking the very first time that we started using these demolition charges for their intended purpose. Surprisingly, they were actually very useful for their intended purpose and actually helped us end up finding several gravlight panels tucked away in some containers. These will be perfect for building onto the ship furthermore. We would continue exploring throughout the rest of this facility, which actually ended up being much smaller than we thought it would be. Although we found quite a few useful things, there wasn't much of note, I'm afraid. However, while we're waiting for our engine to cool down, which didn't seem to take all that long in temperatures like these, we might as well start mining out a few resources like compacted machinery and steel while we're here. We would also end up having a bulk goods trader stop in near the ship who we decided to trade with and even buy a reinforced barrel from because, well, we need something to fire our new anti-grain warhead as well as a few of the other mortar shells that we had gotten recently out of. While we were scanning for more gravcore energy signatures, we ended up picking up the signal of a satellite in orbit that appears to be abandoned for the most part, as we don't detect any actual faction signatures or call signs, so we decided to head up there to see what it held within. Upon our arrival to the satellite, it appeared to be a spherically shaped large station of sorts. Though there were no living organisms aboard, the place was not completely devoid of movement. It was large, vast, and well defended by many a turret. Uranium slug turrets, no less, I might add. Not very easy to defeat, I'll say, as... Whoa! Whoa, what was that? Oh, hello there, Grump. Thank you very much. I suppose those launchers were worth the wait after all last episode, eh? Now, with the slug turret on this side completely destroyed, we were free to start our exploration and excavation of the satellite, I might add. And indeed I shall add it, because we started excavating a great big sealed crate, and out popped a great big machine, oddly enough. It would seem this large machine just so happens to be a gravship shield generator. Exactly what we needed for our ship, I'd say. And now we don't have to waste resources building our own. As we continued moving all throughout the inner workings of the satellite, the place was completely filled with unstable fuel nodes. But even with them exploding, thankfully, due to the lack of oxygen, the flames went out very quickly, causing very little damage to the surrounding satellite as well as our crew, most importantly. Even so, though, things were not exactly hunky-dory, as you might expect, because many of our crew were getting injured from the defensive drones on the inside. By the time it was said and done, though, we ended up finding many treasures like sentience catalysts, as well as yet another Archean seed, meaning that we can really terraform something now. But even after going throughout the entire satellite and taking what we wanted, we didn't decide to leave just yet. I really would hate to let all of these solar panels go to waste, as all of them seem to be functioning. Unfortunately, we can't reinstall them, so we'll just deconstruct them for their precious steel and components. Now, the other power generating sections of the satellite were filled with solar panels as well, but also more uranium slug turrets, which we would have to rush so that they didn't shoot every single one of us, killing any of us, eventually managing to defeat them as well, freeing us up to help ourselves to all the components in steel that we would like. And we decided to add some more research to our repertoire, being uranium slug turrets. I think they'll be a great addition to the ship. After experiencing the danger that they pose to us landing here at the satellite, especially from so far away, there was no way that we couldn't add them. If they were good enough to protect this satellite for however many years, since ancient times it would seem, and most of them still intact, I think they're good enough to protect us in the ship. Speaking of protection, though, it looks like we're going to need it, as a few groups of mechanoids have landed in the area, this time not on our old asteroid base, but on the actual satellite. And they've come for our blood. Thankfully, before they attack, they would be prepping for a few hours, trying to locate our position through GPS, I suppose, I'm not sure, but it would give us an opportunity to equip many of our EMP launchers, which was an absolute godsend, because as the Scythers started coming for us, the launchers would stun them, giving our ship's gun systems time to take them out. The biggest issue currently that the ship's systems, as well as we ourselves face, is getting overrun with too many all at once. But thankfully, these Scythers would be taken out one by one before that could happen, and we were victorious. Ah, more steel for the scrap heap. Poetic that our ship will be built from the corpses of mechanoids, being that it is the mechanoid's bane, of course. Ah, I'm a sucker for the little sentimental details, you know? And I'm not just talking out my ass either. We're actually going to be using the steel and whatnot that we got from those Scythers, as well as the satellite and solar panels, though, but to add onto the back of our ship, extending it out further. This time I didn't really have any exact goal in mind like I normally do with, oh, we're going to add turrets here or a recreation room here, that sort of thing. Realistically, other than just wanting a place to put the generator for the shield, that way it's not in the way, and in doing so I also freed up a lot of room. Essentially just putting in a spot for the generator, but also making a larger cargo bay for many of our storage facilities, as well as a safer place I should add, to keep our demo charges. And this actually did free up a lot of room in the upper part of the ship as you get closer to the control room, as you can see with these before and afters. If I'm being honest with myself though, truthfully, maybe we just wanted a little extra room to play some space poker. Now, what's the difference between normal poker and space poker? You know what, actually, seems pretty self-explanatory, I guess. Nevertheless, I digress, as we have recently finished up research into uranium slug turrets, allowing us to now build as many as we like onto the ship. Once we get some uranium, that is. But whoa, Nelly, hold your horses, friendos, as it would seem that we've detected another grav core at a cave entrance on the planet's surface, and we're gonna start heading down there right away. Well, this looks like a wonderful place to die, but here's hoping it's not where we die. There's a great big gaping hole in the ground, and it seems to be the entrance to a much larger insectoid hive. The crew were going to draw straws to see who had to go into the damn thing first, but they didn't have enough time as the insectoids already started attacking our ship's weapons. The native insectoids were not happy at all about our presence and were very aggressive and territorial over the entire cave system. After we gave them a warm welcome, we started heading down into the cave entrance as one does. When there's danger, of course you go head first into it, right? Okay. The insect lair. Sure is dark and moist down here. Given the opponents that we seem to be facing, we were sure to keep our flaming weaponry near us at all times. Mega spiders are the biggest threat that we feel we'll be dealing with, and thankfully they have no natural defense against fire. But unfortunately, since we were trying to break through the hive walls without detection, we wouldn't really be able to use our flaming weaponry, as this might alert some of the insectoids. Uh-oh, looks like that ended up happening anyways. We have a lot of insectoids tunneling up from under the ground. Thankfully, this little ambush of bugs seemed to be quite insignificant, but as we continued putting down more and more of them, the entire cave started to vibrate, almost as if, an entire army of bugs was rushing right for our position. Yeah, every single last insectoid knew that we were in the hive now. There was no way out other than through them. Immediately engaging our launchers, lighting these narrow hive passageways ablaze, choking on our own soot and smoke, as our exoskeletal enemies turned to a crisp before our very eyes. This was no easy fight. Taking on the entire hive with some fire was better than doing it without, but we still ended up becoming quite injured, not only from the bugs attacking us, but also a bit of negligence and a little bit of friendly fire from our own flames, I'm afraid. Because of this, we would end up splitting into two teams. Team 1 would tend to our wounded and to our injured and would start traversing out of the cave, trying to find their way back to the entrance to get back to the ship. Team 2, led by none other than Captain Woody, would continue throughout the rest of the hive until they finally would find, my good God, a hive queen, a behemoth beast of legendary renown. Luckily, it would seem that she has yet to spot us as we're hiding in the dark, but it won't be long before she detects us. So before that happens, we're going to take the opportunity to get our wounded out of the cave and back onto the ship before they become Hive Queen food. Uh-oh, looks like she spotted us. Worst of all, she snuck up on our squad, as it was quite dark in here. We weren't expecting her to be able to be that silent. With a bit of fire, bullets, and an axe to the face, we swiftly put her ass down. With the Hive Queen beaten and defeated, she is now at our mercy. But would she offer us mercy? I think not. We were astonished at ourselves. We had only heard tale of these legendary beasts, yet no stories of anyone ever killing one. I suppose no one's quite as crazy as we are to come into its lair. And with the monster slain, we shall now reap our reward of a grav core before we finally head back to the surface and ultimately back to the Mechanoid's bane. I gotta say that having another grav core feels a whole lot better once you've washed all the bug blood off of your armor. Speaking of, These cannibalistic bugs aren't the only ones who will be eating good tonight, though. Funny, without their queen, they seem much more passive. You know, it would just be such a shame to let this giant beast go to waste like that. Her meat and all her jelly? No, I think not. Not if we have anything to say about it. Coleman would start preparing her by butchering her and turning her into what jelly he could and meat that he could. Now, the jelly, of course, is absolutely delectable and sweet, and we would bake it into some little treats for the entire crew to celebrate our great victory here. Her meat, on the other hand, was very bitter and tough. Blech. So instead, we decided to start refining it into chem fuel. I know, I talked about earlier how we're using mechanoid corpses to build onto the ship. Now we're using our enemies to fuel our ship. Ugh, poetry at its best. With our newly acquired grav core, we would end up building yet another grav power cell, which I think we built last episode or the episode before our first one. Just know that I'm extremely tickled to have yet another. For quite a while, given the fact that we almost died down there, not only due to the fact that we almost burnt ourselves alive or inhaled too much smoke and choked ourselves to death, but also the fact that we had a bunch of bugs nibbling on our toesies and fingies every 5 seconds, we decided to stay on the ship for our remaining time in this region, enjoy some television, some food, and just enjoy not almost being dead. Once everybody was feeling a little bit more comfortable though, and all of their wounds had healed up for the most part, we started to head to an asteroid in orbit around the planet that just so happens to have traces of uranium. And yet again, I decided to use the demolition charges for their intended purpose, and as you can see, this worked out rather well for us. Though they couldn't really mine the uranium, and we didn't want them to in case some of it blew up, they helped us out with getting rid of some stone. After a while of being here in orbit once more though, we ended up picking up the signal of a mechanoid hub in orbit around the planet. Looks like we might just be finally zeroing in on the mechanoid hive. Of course though, because of the immense danger that these mechanoids pose though, we wanted to go ahead and get our uranium slug turrets built ASAP. I mean, that is the entire reason that we even landed up here after all. Once they were completed though, we were tickled plum pink and feeling safer already. Since these penetrate armor, they shouldn't have any issue penetrating the mechanical shell of a mechanoid either. But we still needed something else. We ended up building ourselves a fabrication area, and at this area we would start to work on a pilot assistant. This is a neural link that will allow our pilots to basically be connected in the brain with the ship itself, making them much better pilots, which is going to be quite crucial if we're trying to scurry around mechanoid defensive systems, as one might imagine. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that we ended up implanting this into the captain's brain, since he is the one that's always at the helm. And now that he's ready, once the anesthesia wore off, it was time for us to head to this mech platform. Well, looks like we finally arrived. I really hope that it has what we're looking for, some type of map or coordinates to the hive. Perhaps we can hack in and maybe trace its signal? Who knows? There's only one way to find out. We immediately started hacking blast doors and making our way through the mechanoid platform facility. Surprisingly, all was quite quiet and there were no mechanoids in sight. Well, at first. Looks like we've been a bit careless and we've awoken the sleeping bear within. These slumbering mechanical bastards were far too difficult for us to take on by ourselves on the inside, so we did the smart thing. We led them outside the doors where our ship could handle them for us. A smart solution, but also perhaps the most cowardly thing of all that we could have done. Here's the thing, we're not risking our lives nor trying to get ourselves killed before we make it to the hive, and even then, we'd also prefer to stay alive. And a mechanoid platform like this, as you can easily see, isn't exactly the safest place to be having a fight. There are many different facilities just like this one, full of humans and also maybe some sentry drones, things like that, but none at all, are quite as tough as mechanoids. All that just to say that this was an absolute slog. Trying to get through this facility looking for anything useful to help us find the mechive was a complete and utter nightmare. Genuinely, I mean that. It's an absolute miracle that we didn't end up losing anyone, because this was just very, very dangerous and very, very difficult. We had severe injuries, most of which were burns from incendiary launchers, from centipedes, and there were a few infections here and there. Thankfully, no one died, although we came awful close to losing Ditch when she almost, and I truly mean almost, bled to death. Thankfully, we managed to stop the bleeding literally within a minute or two of that happening. After we were finished searching the entire place, we retreated back to the ship with our tails tucked between our legs, and I was feeling a bit disheartened, and I actually mean that. We were still no closer to finding the Hive, and I know I play things up for dramatic effect in the videos, but I really want to express the fact that the series almost ended here. Maybe that's my fault, because maybe I was trying to rush through a little too fast or what have you, but we almost ended up getting killed on several occasions, and it literally was a nightmare. But thankfully, no one died, and we're fine. The trip and the fight here, though, wasn't a complete waste, as we did end up getting many useful items, one of which being yet another unique rifle. We also ended up getting some Glitter World medicine, which was great. Some of these items, though, could not be obtained, as the risk of death was ever present in their vicinity. A lot of these mechs could not be tempted to come outside where our ship could blast them into pieces, so they're just gonna have to keep that medicine, I guess. Speaking again on the unique charge lance that we ended up getting, this custom charge lance actually is lightweight and ornamental. Exactly as to what that means, I don't know, except for the fact that it doesn't really have any weight. It is still a charge lance nonetheless, though, so I gave it to Nathan, as she, right next to Coleman, has the best shooting skill out of all of our crew. And also she has all of her fingers and arms, which pretty important, I'd say. Since we're going to be landed at the Mechanoid platform for at least a few more days, we've decided to start working on the research into hunter traps. Now, we don't really have all that much interest into the traps themselves, but using the backpack form where we can throw them, that might just be something we're interested in. While we're researching, I want the ship to be a bit more self-sufficient. This is something we should have done a long time ago, but up until this point we haven't really worried about it, as we've been traveling back and forth to these different areas so fast, and we keep finding packaged survival meals and other types of food. Anyhow, long story short, we built some hydroponics basins so that we can grow some rice on the ship, supplementing our diet a bit. After a while, we finished our research into hunter drones, now making them available for us to craft. We had Puppy here go to the machining table and start whipping up our very first one, and naturally, of course, we would also allow Puppy to equip it. It works very similar to a turret pack. You just kind of throw it and let it do its job, except this thing's job is to be a grenade with wings. Very exciting. So exciting, in fact, that we would spend the resources to build a couple more, one for Coleman and one for Nathan, since the two of them have unique weapons, and they're almost definitely going to be part of our squad who is doing these important attacks and stuff like that. Speaking of which, we ended up getting the coordinates to an orbital cache from an orbital trader that we were doing a little bit of bartering with. Basically, it's an item stash, but in the middle of an asteroid in space. Pretty cool. So we decided to head on over. I thought we might as well while we're trying to pinpoint the signal of the mechive. Since we didn't know exactly as to where this stash was inside the asteroid, we just started mining it out in a large X shape, and voila, we found it right in the middle. I really wish I could tell you that something interesting ended up happening here, but there was nobody defending it. Whoever had stored these things in here had been long gone and left nothing to defend it. What was in here? A good bit of food, a recurve bulb, some herbal medicine, some strange items to stash away for sure, but it would seem that they're ours now. You know, looking back on that clip now, I realized that there was a turret in one of those rooms, but it was so easily defeated, I really didn't pay attention. Either way, though, all of this food and whatnot was ours now, and as such, we started hauling it back to the ship. But once we returned to our control room, we have finally zeroed in on the mechive. We've located its signal, and it's not all that far from our current position on the asteroid. This is it, my friends. This is what we have finally been waiting for. There's no going back now. The only way out is forward. Looks like we finally made it to the end of the line, folks. This place was a humongous orbital station of nothing but cold, unfeeling, uncaring, hardened steel and circuitry. There was no sound, but the absence of sound was deafening. In every single corner of the station, off to the distance, we could see gigantic anti-ship guns. Without our signal jammer, those would have surely turned us into space debris. We could see a multitude of mech processors. I suppose that makes sense, seeing how this is their main processing facility for the planet. And in the middle of it all, a Cerebrix core, a computer, a CPU controlling all mechanoids, a brain guiding the metallic blades of these bastards into the flesh of humanity. That is our target. But first, looks like we're going to need to deal with the welcoming party. Times like these, I couldn't be more grateful that we had turned our gravship into a full-on gunship that could easily dismantle mechanoids with just a few uranium slugs. Our ship could keep the mechanoids distracted as our crew began taking on the defenses around the core. There were 4 large turrets in total, 2 of which being charge and the other 2 being incinerary. We decided to use our demo charges to get rid of the first, and this was extremely effective. However, it was also a lot more dangerous because someone had to go up and place the charge. So for the remaining 3, the decision was made to just simply use our weapons. With our entire crew, this would also be quite effective, not quite as fast, but much safer as we could take cover behind many of the mech processors within the room. We would continue forward, taking out each turret one by one. However, moving in such a large group like this with the entire crew has its drawbacks. For example, Nathan ended up taking several charge blasts straight to the chest, burning right through her vac suit, and she would have to be rescued. Luckily, she had survived the entire ordeal, though, and the rest of the crew could continue to the last final turret, destroying it. Now, all 4 of these turrets had been eviscerated, and the core is undefended. At least by outside sources, that is. For you see, the core relies on 3 stabilizers on the platform to keep it invulnerable. We can't touch it at all until these are destroyed. So our mission continues on. Due to their injuries and the possible response from the mechive after we destroy the stabilizers, most of our team will be staying inside the ship, not only to keep themselves alive, but also to keep the ship functioning and defending itself as well. The ship is providing a crucial role in keeping the mechanoids off our back, and without it, I fear we will fail. In the meantime, the captain and the others are going to begin searching for the first and eventually all 3 of these stabilizers. Easier said than done, I might add. Even though the ship was attracting most of the mechanoid threat, there were still quite a few stragglers and strays that we would have to face. And eventually, once we did find the very first of these 3 stabilizers, the entire facility was filled with centipedes and militaurs and many others that put up a pretty decent fight. Finally, once we put a dent in their metallic asses, though, we could destroy the stabilizer. 1 down, 2 more to go. After the first stabilizer had been destroyed, though, the mechive would respond accordingly with a large mechanoid squad, calling in all the mechs from the surrounding orbital platforms to try to defend itself. This was going to be a lot on our ship and on our crew. Maybe much more than they would be able to handle. But we were too far in now. There was no turning back. The only thing we could do was endure and fight like we'd never fought before. Eventually, we had found the second stabilizer, and we even managed to do so without awakening its defensive squad. I had planned on using a mortar to shoot our anti-grain warhead on the inside, killing them before they even were an issue, but apparently mortars can't be used in space, which makes sense, I guess. Looks like we'll have to handle things the old way. The captain took the anti-grain warhead and chucked it right into the opening, while Puppy got ready to fire at it. That seemed to do the trick, but that activated yet another mechanoid squad to come to try to defend the Hive. A much larger one, I might add. The platform was absolutely flooded with the mechanical menace. The ship's weapon systems had held out thus far, but they were beginning to run out of ammunition, and our guns' barrels were glowing red, overheating. An impossible fight was beginning, one in which we would not survive. We needed to hurry and to get rid of the last remaining stabilizer. We were running out of time, and even worse so, our poor Nathan would end up taking a charge blast straight through the heart, killing her. As her corpse slowly slumped to the metal plating of the ship's outer floors in the low gravity, the battle continued on. Grump would rescue Mitsuya, bringing her inside, as we would have to rely on the ship to defend us solely. Thank God, though, the captain and the others had finally made it to the last stabilizers. The crew would try to keep the mechanoids off his back as he beat and bashed this stabilizer, eventually, finally destroying it. The core was finally open, completely undefended, and Dragon, being our closest crew member, would start rushing towards it. Although he wasn't the only one. It was an invasion of Scythers coming straight for Dragon, trying to stop him, and they would. Almost. Completely surrounded by Scythers with no other option, Dragon would decide to destroy the core. Dragon begins to tear apart the hair-thin cerebral mesh inside the Cerebrix core. The mesh twists and groans as if alive, electricity arcs among the latticework frame. Then, in an instant, all goes dark and lifeless. Just in the nick of time, Dragon old buddy old pal, looks like you just about had your head scissored off by 2 long arms. It's a shame that we had to destroy the core. Imagine all the good those mechanoids could have done for the people of this planet if they were under our control. But we didn't have enough time to salvage the tech, as that Scyther was about 2 seconds from killing Dragon. It would seem that literally all of the mechanoids went offline. Kinda crazy that that's all it took. I mean, that was a lot, but one simple core, one simple brain to control them all. Perhaps, thinking about it now, it's for the best that they're offline. It's the more ethical thing to do. But now, we finally won. We've given so much to complete our mission. Some of us have given more than others. Some of us have gave a lot. Some of us have gave everything. But it was because of their gracious and courageous sacrifices that we can even share in this victory today. And I know that they'd be thrilled to see us now. You know, if destroying the core really shuts down all mechanoids, doesn't that mean... Well, looks like we're gonna have that asteroid base after all. Until next time, friends. Hi there. Thank you ever so much for watching today's episode, what was going to be the final episode of our RimWorld Odyssey series and journey in this series, of course. But, of course, we have an asteroid base to build, so we have one more episode after this one, my friends. And then after that, I think we might even start a new series with Odyssey, of course, but maybe modded stuff like that. This is actually recorded before the last episode goes up. I know in the last episode I asked you guys for suggestions on what you'd like to see in the next series here for RimWorld Odyssey, or just in general, of course. So I haven't got to see those yet. I still have my internet out as well. My ISP is supposed to send over a tech tomorrow to fix that, so hopefully we'll be back on track fairly soon and everything will be hunky-dory. I love you guys, though. I truly do. I just want to express that. I want to thank you guys ever so much, even though I can't really get on the internet that much right now to see your suggestions and your feedback and stuff like that. I still nevertheless appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely wonderful, and yeah, I couldn't do it without you. I really couldn't. The series, none of this. So yeah, I love you guys. I really do. But again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.